Hi everyone, Adrian here, and today on Write Productively I'm going to talk about what I mean by writing productively. So the best way to describe it to you is through a analogy, and what I want you to think of is you're writing whatever your project is, whether it be a book or a novella or a script, and I want you to think that it's kind of a journey where you start the story at point A and you end it at point B. And I want you to think that this is like a rally. And it's the type of rally, it's an endurance rally, so there's no prize for being there first. It's just about getting it completed because it's quite tough. And this rally, it's going to take you through urban areas, built up areas, it's going to take you through deserts, it's going to take you through all sorts of terrain, which is kind of like, representing, the different turns and complexity of your story. And you're driving in a car, and your car represents like your mental output, your work output, your system that you're using, and it can go from 0 to 100 miles an hour. Now, traditionally, what productivity gurus will say is, we can tell you how to get 100 miles an hour out of your car all the time. And the problem is that for short bursts of work, that's possible. You can kind of do that. The problem is this is a long journey, and like if you imagine driving the car, if you drive at 100 miles an hour, things are going to start to break. You're going to wear down the components. You're going to, if you go through a residential area at 100 miles an hour, you're going to get arrested, or your car will crash, and you'll never finish that journey. And what we need to do is to get to the end goal. So, as a result, I think a lot of productivity advice is useless for writers, because it only applies to sort of short bursts. And as you know, I think in most writers, what will happen is you'll have good days, you'll have bad days. We strive for consistency as writers, but we never seem to achieve it. So, what we will do instead is we'll drive along and we'll be going fine and we'll obey the speed limits. When it's sort of a tricky plot point, we might only go 20 miles an hour, but we'll still make progress. And then when we go on the motorway and it's clear, we'll go at 70 miles an hour and have a really productive day, and we'll get loads of words written. And then inevitably what happens is we go past a town called Netflix or Call of Duty, or I'm trying to think of something else you would procrastinate on, cleaning the kitchen. And that town, it's a pretty town, and some people, what will happen is they go, oh, that looks like a pretty town, we'll pull off into that town. And what happens is that they go, well, you know what? Let's spend a couple of days here. It's really more appealing than the desert that we've got to go across next. And what happens is that you kind of get stuck in that town, and by the time you kind of go on for the journey, well, the race is over. They're not handing out any medals. It's not a race, by the way, but they're not handing out any medals anymore. And, it's going to take you 3 years to get to the end because you keep stopping off at every town and things like that. Now, the flip side is, and there's this concept called toxic productivity, which is kind of the 100 miles an hour. But there's also like a version of this where you kind of go, right, we're getting up at 6 in the morning. We want to finish. We want to get to the end goal as soon as possible, because if we can enter another endurance race. We can start a new project. So, there is in our interest as writers to try and minimize the length of that journey, right? But we don't want to sacrifice quality. So, which is the endurance of the car. Because if we go too fast, the things will break and it won't work, and then we will never complete that journey. So there's this other idea where, you know, you say, right, we'll get up at 6. This is what most people will do, is they'll say, right, we'll get up at 6. We'll work to 10 o'clock at night. We'll get up the next day, and then we'll do the same again. And the problem is that, you know, if you think of a car journey, you sleep in the car, you know, wherever we are and things like that, we'll just keep going, just get through it. And there's times when you've got to do that, if you've got a deadline and things like that, that happens. We want to try and avoid that, because if you think about it, if you drive at all, what happens if you're driving all day and you get a little bit of sleep, you get a decent amount of sleep, but then you keep driving all day again, and driving all day again after that, is that you'll get tired, you'll make mistakes, you'll have an accident. So where we kind of want to be, ideally, as a writer, is that we're driving along. We're kind of like, look, you know, Netflix is coming up in the next 100 miles. We've made some really good mileage today. So why don't we pull over in Netflix? Well, you know, we won't carry on till 10 o'clock. We'll finish at 4. We'll pull over in Netflix. We'll have a great night there. We'll have a great meal. We'll spend the evening in the thing. Get up a little bit later tomorrow, but we'll carry on the journey. And, you know, that's, for me, what writing productively is all about. Is that what we're trying to do is we're trying to reach that end goal with our sanity intact, with the quality still there, and do it in a decent enough time. Now, as I said, it's not a race, but in order to kind of do that, using our rally analogy, it's about building the car and how we set that car up. And so what this channel is going to be doing is we're going to be looking at a lot of things from different areas. You know, predominantly we'll be looking at the things from the productivity space and saying, well, how do they apply to writing? How can we be better writers, but at the same time still understanding that we have a certain way of working? So what we do is we build that car to get us from point A to B to suit the way that we work. And it's going to be different for everybody. And this is why a lot of writing advice is really, really crap, because, you know, some people are plotters. They need a map. You know, before they set off, they need a map and they need to mark off each town they're going to pass through. Other people are like, look, just get in the car, we'll follow the road signs as we go, we'll work it out as we go along. And, you know, both ways are viable, but you'll find that everybody has a slightly different way of working. And this channel, what I want to do is explore some of those different ways of working. So we will touch on craft, but what we're really looking at is like, right, how do I organise myself to write consistently? How do I make sure that if I've only got an hour a day, or a couple of hours a day, how do I maximise the number of words I'm going to get in that small period of time? How do I manage my life so that writing can take a priority, but kind of at the same time that I don't kind of give up on my commitments to family and to the cleaning the house, he says, looking around, and things like that. So there's a lot of areas to explore. I have, over the last 5 or 6 years, no, probably even 10 years now, I used to be the type of person, I used to sit down at my keyboard and I would go, right, I'm writing this story, and I would write. And, you know, using the analogy of our car journey, I would turn right at some point and drive into the middle of the desert. And I realised I needed a map, right? I did this as an experiment, because my first published book took me years and years to write. Other ones have taken me years to revise. But I realised that I was more productive working to a map. Now, that might not be the case for you, so we'll explore those things. And then what I found was that what I tried to do was I had all my to-do lists, and I'd have all my writing to-do lists, and I'd have all my housework to-do list, and other activities to-do list. And what I would find was that literally they would all collide and I would get nothing done. And that's why I first became interested in productivity. And I looked at a task management system called GTD. And we're going to go into this in another video. And I'm not saying this is necessarily for you. But what I realised from looking at this was that instead of, you are one person, so instead of having 5 different lists, I needed one list. But what I needed to do was then be able to manage all these different tasks, prioritise them, plan them out, complete them, and it kind of gave me a way to kind of deal with that. And I used online tools to help me, and I did. I got my writing massive. The amount of words I got written was, and the quality of the words that I wrote, massively improved. And since then, I've been doing further things to try and improve, trying to understand the way that I work. There's this great phrase I keep coming across, is that you fall to the level of your systems. So if I'm having a bad day or a busy day, do I still manage to get some words written? Not every day for me. That's just the way I work. Sometimes I need to kind of, part of my writing process is to go away and think about the next scene. That's just the way that I work. But it ensures that my writing doesn't get forgotten about. And that if I do have a day where I don't write, that there are things in place to kind of nudge me back to it, so that I'm not in that Netflix town for months on end. It's this balance between living life and getting these projects done. And as I say, there are things like word trackers which can be quite helpful. You've probably come across those before. That can sometimes feel like a competition sometimes with how many words you can do in a year, but it can also be really helpful sometimes, because I'll admit that this year I felt all over the place. I mean, the pandemic has been really weird on all of us, and I've been busy on a lot of things, but I sometimes need to take stock. And I looked before I was doing, putting some videos together. I was like, I have it in my system where literally every day, every piece of writing I enter my when I've written, how long I've written for, number of words, which project it's associated with, and I have like a little online form, and it just takes me like 30 seconds to do. Really quick. I always do it at the end of every writing session. And because I've built the system for me, what it means is that I can go in and I can say, right, actually I've worked this many hours on this project this year, and I know for a fact from all my data that I've written over just under, I think, 400,000 words so far this year. So when there were days when I feel like, oh God, I'm getting nothing done, I don't feel like I've achieved anything this year. And writing is quite a solitary experience, and you do sometimes feel like you do all this work with very little to show a lot of the time. Trust me, I know that. Because you'll write a book and you might send it off to an agent and it's not good enough, or even if you've got an agent, you might go out to take it out to market, and it might not sell, or something will happen, or a publisher will fall through. Publishing is tough. And so having these tools that you can go and actually have a look at, first of all, it gives you, it makes you realise, well, okay, that's what I've done. But on top of that, it also allows you to start using that data to analyse, well, actually, I'm losing time here when I could maybe, there's something I could maybe do to improve it. Little hacks that I do is that I found out that my writing, the speed at which I write if I'm right, I will sit down and I will write to a certain amount of quality for a first draft. When I'm writing, I'm not thinking about trying to get the words out. I'm trying to think about getting the scene done. Sometimes it feels faster, sometimes it feels slower. But I can tell you now that I write non-fiction at around 2,000 words an hour. I write fiction at around 1,500 words an hour. Doesn't seem to vary much. Even if I feel like I'm struggling, I can look at I've got data that will kind of back that up. My mind plays tricks on me in that respect. But I've also found that the longer I write for, that rate will drop. So if I write for an hour, I'll write about 1,500 words an hour on fiction. If I write for 2 hours, probably doing only about 1,000 words an hour. So it's got to the stage where it's sometimes more beneficial for me to have 2 smaller writing sessions with a break in between than it is for having 1 longer writing session. I've still got using the same amount of time. I'm just allocating it differently. I have little life hacks that I do, where I will balance some of my writing against something fun, and I will kind of swap between the 2 of them throughout. If I'm writing for a whole day, swap between them throughout the whole day, and I can get massively. It's my Mobius strip of productivity, I call it. So this channel's, in part to kind of talk about some of those ideas and try and help you with, first of all, understanding your writing, to start getting some data and start realising, well, what is it that I do and how is it that I write, but also to have a look at other ideas. I'm constantly looking at ways that people organise their projects and organise their writing, and I try them. And sometimes they work for me, sometimes they don't, sometimes I adopt it, and then I change it, and things like that. But what it's meant is that I am a more efficient writer than I was before I started this journey. And so I want to explore that. Now, if the channel, this is an experiment, like any YouTube, you never know whether it's going to take off or whether it's, other people are interested. But if it does, maybe we can get other writers in to talk about how they manage the project of writing, what they do when they're faced with certain challenges. I know for a fact from my own data that when I have act transition, so like when I go from Act 1 to Act 2 or Act 2 to the final act, I really struggle with the project. I will slow down. I don't know, I read some time ago that there was a story about Neil Gaiman where he said he phoned up his agent one day and he was writing a novel and basically said, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened, I can't write anymore. This project is an absolute pile of crap. I don't know why I ever thought I was a writer. It's all gone wrong. I'm going to have to scrap the project. And the agent or the editor turned around and said, oh, so you're at that point of the project. And he said, well, what do you mean? And they went, you always say this when you get to that certain point in writing a novel. And I think that's the same for all of us. And it's about understanding that and understanding this weird process that goes on in our head. So it would be interesting to kind of get some... I doubt whether we'll ever get Neil Gaiman, but if we ever do, maybe 100th episode, maybe we'll do that. But get other writers in and really, instead of talking about, really dig into the weeds. Do you know what I mean? Really trying to understand how we mentally and how we organise our, mentally prepare and organise ourselves for our writing projects. So that's basically what this channel is about. If you're interested in it, be sure to, click the bell and subscribe. And let me know your ideas. Let me know if you see anything really interesting that talks about, how to write more efficiently. There's a few things that I've read. I'm always interested in hearing more. Let's get a discussion going about this so that we can not only write faster, but with maintaining quality, and not burning ourselves out. Let's see how it goes. So let me know your comments below. Let me know what processes you use. How do you manage your writing? Give me loads of comments below, and I will see you next week for the next video. Thanks everyone, take care.